The night sky stretched endlessly over the city, stars barely visible behind glowing streetlights. The seeker of truth sat alone in a dim study, tracing dusty lines in an ancient book. Jonathan said, "The answer is hidden between the folds of centuries." His voice trembled with obsession, each word echoing against shelves of forgotten knowledge. A storm rumbled faintly outside, rattling the window panes with unseen force. Lightning illuminated equations pinned to the walls, sketches of clocks and spirals scrawled by restless hands. Jonathan whispered, "If time can be bent, then truth can be reclaimed." His eyes burned with restless hunger, as though searching beyond the written words. The reluctant Alia's face appeared in his mind, her cautious warnings still fresh in memory. Emily had said, "Curiosity can destroy what it seeks to save." He pushed aside her voice, drowning in the weight of discovery. Jonathan's hands shook as he flipped a page, breathless with the anticipation of forbidden knowledge. Outside, rain struck harder, as though nature warned of boundaries not meant to be crossed. He whispered to himself, "Every mystery demands its price." The room's shadows stretched unnaturally long, as though time itself hesitated within those walls. Morning arrived with a gray drizzle, the storm lingering. Jonathan stood at the university's stone steps, his notebook clutched tightly. Students passed without noticing the weight of his discovery. Jonathan said, "Knowledge hides where fear keeps it buried." Inside, echoes of voices clashed as professors debated paradoxes, their words bouncing against arched ceilings. One dismissed the concept as fantasy, another whispered of hidden experiments. Jonathan's eyes sharpened as fragments of their voices carried, contradictions dancing like fire across his mind. He muttered, "Truth is never found in agreement." His footsteps echoed through the hallways, every step heavier with urgency. He thought of Emily again, her voice urging him to abandon this chase. Jonathan gritted his teeth, whispering, "Caution has no place where destiny waits." The scent of old paper filled the corridors, memories of past scholars breathing through every wall. His pulse quickened as he pushed open a lecture hall door, determined to challenge what others ignored. The lecture hall buzzed with restless voices, chalk dust lingering in the air. Jonathan moved quietly, sitting near the back, his notebook pressed tightly to his chest. Emily entered moments later, reluctant but curious. Jonathan glanced at her, whispering, "You shouldn't be here." Emily said, "I had to see for myself." Professors argued bitterly, some laughing at impossibility, others lowering voices when secrets brushed too close. Jonathan's jaw tightened as contradiction sparked fire in his thoughts. He muttered, "The louder the denial, the greater the truth it hides." Emily frowned, watching his obsession grow sharper with every word exchanged at the front. She whispered, "Sometimes silence keeps us safe." But Jonathan's eyes blazed, searching for cracks in every lie spoken. The storm outside rattled the windows faintly, blending with heated arguments that grew more desperate with each passing moment. Whispers followed Jonathan down the corridor after the lecture. A figure stood in the shadows, calm and unreadable, the keeper of secrets. Professor Alden said, "Some truths must never be unearthed." Jonathan paused, his chest tightening at the man's deliberate tone. Alden's eyes glimmered coldly, words carrying authority sharpened over decades. Jonathan said, "Knowledge cannot be chained forever." Alden smiled faintly, voice smooth as glass. "It isn't knowledge that chains us, but consequence." Jonathan's pulse raced, Emily's warning echoing silently in his mind. The corridor felt colder, light dimming as Alden's presence grew heavier. Jonathan whispered, "Every lock has a key." Alden leaned closer, murmuring, "And every key opens a door better left closed." The moment ended as quickly as it began, Alden fading into the lecture crowd like a ghost, leaving Jonathan's resolve burning hotter than before. That night, Jonathan spread his findings across the study desk once more. Pages of notes, photographs, and clippings formed a chaotic map. His hand hovered over a line circled in red, an obscure reference buried in forgotten journals. Jonathan whispered, "This is where it begins." Rain drummed against the window, candlelight flickering across his weary face. Emily's words haunted him, warning against the path he chased. But his voice broke through the silence. Truth waits only for those who dare. His eyes narrowed as he pinned another sketch to the wall, connections forming like veins of lightning across paper. The storm raged louder, as though nature mirrored his obsession. He whispered again, "Time will reveal itself." Shadows grew longer, his figure swallowed in their depth. Alone, Jonathan felt both terror and exhilaration, unaware of the price about to be demanded. Jonathan walked through the library's restricted wing, the scent of dust and forgotten ink hanging heavy. His coat dragged across marble floors as echoes stretched into silence. Jonathan whispered, "Every secret waits where few dare to look." He traced the locked cases, glass fogged with age. Inside sat journals marked with codes only the daring could decipher. His pulse hammered in rhythm with each echo of his boots. The librarian's gaze followed from the distance, sharp and cold. Jonathan muttered, "The past is louder than the present." His hand pressed against the glass, eyes reflecting symbols within. Emily's voice rang in memory, "Truth destroys those who cannot bear it." Jonathan clenched his jaw, whispering, "Then let it destroy me." Shadows pooled deeper in corners, air charged with knowledge too heavy to breathe. He moved further, each step a defiance of warnings, each breath stealing pieces of history meant to remain buried. Professor Alden appeared suddenly, his figure tall, composed, and unsettling. Alden said, "You search for doors sealed for reason." His gray eyes cut like steel, voice calm yet commanding. Jonathan stiffened, whispering, "Doors are made to be opened." Alden stepped closer, tone smooth as glass. "Time is not a path for men, but a weapon against them." Jonathan's fists tightened around his notebook. He said, "Weapons belong to those who dare wield them." Alden smiled faintly, hands clasped behind his back. "Curiosity is fire," he said, "and fire burns until nothing remains." Jonathan's chest rose sharply, every word piercing deeper. Emily's memory flared, her warning fragile yet fierce. Jonathan thought, her caution is his ally. Alden's shadow stretched across the marble floor, towering over Jonathan like a shroud. The silence between them held the weight of centuries untold. Jonathan whispered finally, "Truth cannot remain in chains forever." The following morning, sunlight pierced through tall windows of a lecture chamber, dust dancing in golden beams. Professors argued over paradoxes, voices sharp with scorn. One said, "A traveler erases himself." Another countered, "Experiments whisper otherwise." Jonathan sat silently, each contradiction like sparks in dry wood. He muttered, "The truth thrives in conflict." Emily shifted uncomfortably beside him, her brows drawn. She whispered, "This hunger will consume you." Jonathan's lips tightened, eyes never leaving the debates before him. Papers fluttered as a professor slammed equations on the board. Chalk dust clouded the air like smoke after battle. Jonathan whispered, "Every paradox is proof of possibility." Emily's hands trembled slightly, her empathy straining against his unyielding fire. Outside clouds gathered again, storm warning in the daylight. Jonathan's heart raced, each word from the professors pulling him deeper into obsession, further from reason. Emily caught Jonathan in the courtyard after the heated debates, her voice firm. Emily said, "You're drowning in illusions." Jonathan looked at her, eyes burning. He whispered, "Illusion is only another name for what has not been proven." Emily's shoulders stiffened, fear mixing with frustration. She said, "Not all doors must be opened." Jonathan stepped closer, his words sharp, "Every door hides an answer." Wind stirred leaves around them, gray skies rolling above. Emily's face softened briefly, pleading. She said, "What you seek could destroy you." Jonathan turned away, notebook clutched like armor. He muttered, "Then let destruction come." Her voice cracked softly, "I will not follow you into madness." He froze for a moment, her words piercing, but obsession carried him forward. The courtyard's cold stone mirrored the chill in their words, silence heavier than the storm clouds gathering above. Late that night, Jonathan's study became a battlefield of evidence. Books lay open, maps marked with symbols, strings linking clippings across the wall. His breath grew shallow as he uncovered a hidden journal passage, hinting at suppressed experiments. Jonathan whispered, "They knew. They tried." His hands shook as he circled the passage, ink smearing under pressure. Thunder rolled outside, shaking glass panes. He muttered, "Proof lies in silence, and silence is never innocent." Candlelight bent shadows into monstrous shapes, crawling across walls. Jonathan leaned back, exhaustion painted across his face, but his eyes burned brighter than ever. He whispered, "The truth has roots deeper than they admit." In that moment, he felt the keeper's shadow lingering, a presence unseen yet suffocating. Jonathan clutched his notes tighter, fear entwined with determination, his resolve sealing into unbreakable steel. Jonathan wandered through the old city square at twilight, the lamplight painting golden pools across cobblestones slick with rain. He stopped when a cloaked figure stepped from the shadows. The mysterious outsider spoke, "Truth comes only in fragments." Jonathan's chest tightened, whispering, "Fragments lead to the whole." The figure's face was obscured beneath the hood, but their voice carried ancient weight. "Outsider," said, "time punishes those who chase its spine." Jonathan muttered, "Then I will suffer gladly." Emily's distant words echoed, urging him to turn away. The outsider handed him a folded note, fingers pale, trembling with strange resolve. Jonathan said, "Why help me if danger follows?" The outsider's lips curved faintly, because silence has a heavier price. Thunder rumbled, and the figure melted back into shadows, leaving Jonathan clutching the note with shaking hands, a storm rising both above and within. Back in his study, Jonathan opened the folded note. Words written in jagged ink, "The keeper hides experiments beneath stone." His breath caught as lightning cracked across the sky. Jonathan whispered, "Hidden beneath, always beneath." Emily entered quietly, her voice low. Emily said, "You look like a man haunted." Jonathan looked up, eyes wild, haunted by silence louder than truth. Emily frowned, whispering, "Or haunted by your own obsession." He slammed the note on the table, saying, "This is proof. They've buried experiments." Emily's hands trembled as she touched the paper, eyes darting in fear. Jonathan whispered, "We are closer than ever." She shook her head, whispering, "Closer to ruin, not truth." The storm rattled the glass violently, their voices swallowed by its roar. Jonathan leaned closer to her, whispering, "Then let ruin come. But let it bring truth with it." Jonathan's research led him to a graveyard at dawn, mist curling across worn stones. He traced an inscription linked to the tragic figure, a forgotten scientist erased from history. Jonathan whispered, "Your silence holds the key." Emily stood near, shivering. Emily said, "This place chills me." Jonathan replied, "Because here lies the truth buried alive." His hand pressed against the stone, as if willing it to answer. Emily frowned, whispering, "Not all tragedies reveal answers." Jonathan's voice hardened, "All tragedies reveal something." The stone bore symbols that matched his notes, linking past to present. His heart raced as the grave seemed to breathe beneath his touch. Emily's eyes glistened, torn between pity and fear. The mist thickened, wind whistling through broken crosses, as though the dead themselves whispered warnings to the living. At the university, the keeper of secrets addressed a circle of scholars, his tone confident, almost mocking. Alden said, "Time travel is myth, unworthy of serious thought." Applause rippled among the professors. Jonathan stood at the edge, fists clenched, whispering, "The louder the denial, the sharper the truth." Emily tugged at his sleeve, whispering, "Don't draw attention." Jonathan ignored her, his voice cutting through, "Then why bury experiments if myth is all they are?" Silence struck the hall, eyes darting between Alden and Jonathan. Alden smiled thinly. "A man obsessed hears whispers in empty rooms." Jonathan stepped forward, glare unshaken. "Better obsession than blindness," he said. The room shifted uncomfortably, tension humming like static. Emily's heart pounded, her eyes pleading for restraint. Alden's shadow seemed to grow larger, swallowing the light, as though the hall itself bowed to his will. Jonathan stormed into his study that night, anger burning hotter than the candles flickering weakly against the storm. He scattered books across the desk, muttering, "Blind fools, every one of them." Emily entered, eyes wide with fear. She said, "You've provoked them too far." Jonathan growled, "Truth does not bend to applause or ridicule." Emily whispered, "But men do, and men will crush you." Jonathan slammed his hand on the desk, whispering, "Let them try." Shadows stretched unnaturally long, walls groaning under the storm's weight. His notebook fell open to the outsider's note. He traced the words with trembling fingers, whispering, "Beneath stone lies the answer." Emily's tears welled as she whispered, "You are losing yourself." Jonathan's eyes burned brighter, defiant and untamed. He muttered, "Losing myself is the price of finding what they fear." Jonathan followed whispered directions into a forgotten archive beneath the university, the air thick with damp stone and dust. A figure waited among the shadows, the hidden enemy, a colleague he once trusted. Marcus said, "You chase storms with empty hands." Jonathan frowned, whispering, "Storms hide lightning, and lightning reveals." Marcus smiled faintly, eyes calm but calculating. He said, "Some truths devour their seekers." Jonathan stepped closer, notebook in hand, "Then let them devour me." Marcus's expression softened with false warmth. "I only want to protect you," he said. Jonathan muttered, "Protection is the enemy of discovery." The air grew colder, torches flickering along cracked walls. Marcus leaned forward, voice low, "Be careful where you dig. Not all allies walk the same road." Jonathan's heart raced, suspicion gnawing at his resolve. The silence between them echoed louder than words, heavy with unspoken betrayal. The confrontation lingered in Jonathan's mind as he walked across the deserted courtyard that evening. Emily hurried to his side, eyes full of fear. Emily said, "Something about Marcus unsettles me." Jonathan whispered, "He wears truth like a mask." Emily's breath trembled. Trust bends too easily to deception. Jonathan muttered, "Then suspicion will be my shield." She grasped his arm tightly, whispering, "I can't keep watching you vanish into shadows." Jonathan pulled away, voice sharp, "The shadows are where answers live." Emily's expression broke, her heart torn between loyalty and fear. She said softly, "Then, answers may cost you everything else." Rain began to fall, drops darkening the stones beneath their feet. Jonathan raised his face to the sky, muttering, "Everything else is already gone." The silence between them grew wider than the storm clouds above. Inside the study, Jonathan and Emily argued late into the night, shadows stretching long across maps and notes. Emily said, "I won't let this obsession swallow you." Jonathan whispered, "Obsession is the only compass left." She shook her head, voice breaking, "This compass leads only into darkness." Jonathan's eyes blazed, muttering, "Darkness is where stars are born." Emily's hands trembled as she touched his notes, whispering, "Then you will be lost among them." Jonathan pulled the papers away, growling, "Better lost in truth than safe in ignorance." Her tears shimmered under candlelight, voice soft, "You're not only losing yourself, Jonathan, you're losing me." His body stiffened, but his eyes never left the maze of notes. Silence swelled, broken only by the storm outside, as love and obsession collided across the fragile space between them. The next morning, Jonathan met with Marcus in a secluded garden behind the university. Marcus said, "Your path grows dangerous." Jonathan's voice sharpened, "Danger is the measure of truth's worth." Marcus's eyes flickered briefly, betraying unease. He said, "A wise man knows when to stop digging." Jonathan muttered, "And a coward knows when to run." Marcus smirked faintly, his tone smooth, "Cowards live longer." Jonathan's fists clenched, voice low, "Then I will die with answers." Birds scattered suddenly as Marcus leaned closer, whispering, "Not all betrayals come from enemies." Jonathan froze, suspicion crawling deeper. He whispered, "Then I'll trust no one." Marcus smiled faintly, masking truth with charm. The garden's silence grew heavy, leaves trembling in the morning wind as secrets thickened like fog between them. That evening, Jonathan returned to his study, exhausted yet unyielding. As he pinned another note to the wall, the air shifted suddenly. The mysterious outsider emerged from the shadows. Outsider said, "Beware those closest to you." Jonathan spun, eyes narrowing. "You always speak in riddles." Outsider's voice deepened. "The clearest truths wear cloaks of trust." Jonathan stepped closer, growling, "Who betrays me?" The outsider's face remained half hidden, only a faint smirk breaking the stillness. "Betrayal comes not from strangers," he said, "but from hands you already hold." Jonathan's heart pounded, suspicion twisting like a knife. Emily's face flashed in his mind, and Marcus's shadow pressed heavier. He muttered, "Trust is poison." The outsider whispered, "And poison often tastes sweet." With that, he vanished again, leaving Jonathan staring into silence, paranoia tightening its grip like chains. Jonathan stood in a forgotten chamber, deep beneath the university, the air thick with mildew and silence. A cracked plaque revealed the name of a scientist erased from records, the tragic figure, once a pioneer. Jonathan whispered, "They buried you, but not your truth." Emily's voice echoed softly from behind him. Emily said, "Some histories are hidden for a reason." Jonathan's hand brushed over symbols carved into the stone, his pulse racing as he felt the weight of forgotten tragedy. His voice broke into a whisper, "You were the key all along." Emily stepped closer, her face pale with unease. She said, "This place feels cursed." Jonathan's jaw tightened, muttering, "Curses are only truths wrapped in fear." The chamber seemed to breathe, shadows flickering across damp walls. Jonathan whispered, "Every tragedy leaves a scar, and scars tell stories." Emily's silence trembled between fear and pity. Back in his study, Jonathan pieced fragments together, linking the tragic figure's notes with his own. He whispered, "They tested it, and erased him to erase the proof." Emily leaned on the desk, her hands trembling. She said, "If this is true, then we are chasing ghosts." Jonathan's eyes burned with defiance, whispering, "Ghosts are the keepers of secrets." The storm outside rattled harder, candlelight flickering across pages strewn with red markings. Jonathan muttered, "Every erased man leaves footprints behind." Emily shook her head, whispering, "These footprints lead only to ruin." Jonathan slammed his notebook shut, his voice sharp, "Then ruin will speak before silence ever does." Thunder rolled like judgment, but his obsession only deepened. Emily's shoulders slumped, her eyes filled with both pity and quiet fear. Jonathan's gaze never faltered from the papers. The keeper of secrets gathered a group of scholars in a hall, his voice ringing with authority. Alden said, "Time experiments are fantasy, nothing more." Applause echoed, but Jonathan's jaw tightened. He whispered to himself, "Every denial sharpens the blade of truth." Emily tugged at his sleeve, whispering, "Do not provoke him again." Jonathan stepped forward anyway, his voice cutting through the hall. "Then why bury the tragic figure's name?" Silence froze the crowd, eyes shifting uneasily. Alden's smile thinned, his calm facade cracking slightly. He said, "Some names deserve forgetting." Jonathan's eyes narrowed, muttering, "Truth deserves remembering." The hall grew tense, shadows falling longer across stone walls. Alden's gaze pierced Jonathan, icy and unyielding, as if daring him to continue. Emily's breath quickened, heart pounding with dread, knowing Jonathan had gone too far again. Later that evening, Jonathan confronted Marcus in the archive again. Jonathan said, "You knew about him, didn't you? The tragic figure." Marcus's face stayed calm, though his eyes flickered with unease. Marcus replied smoothly, "I know only what myths tell." Jonathan's jaw tightened, muttering, "You hide too much behind myths." Marcus smirked faintly, voice low, "Better myths than dangerous truths." Jonathan stepped closer, anger rising. "Danger is proof that truth exists." Marcus's smirk widened, but his tone sharpened. Danger is also proof of fools. Jonathan's breath came heavy, suspicion growing with every word. He muttered, "Your mask is cracking." Marcus's eyes hardened, and the silence became suffocating. Emily's voice echoed faintly in Jonathan's memory, warning against misplaced trust, yet his obsession carried him further into Marcus' snare. Back in his study, Jonathan pinned the final piece to the chaotic wall, a note linking the tragic figure to experiments hidden beneath stone vaults. His breath shook, whispering, "It was never myth, it was memory buried alive." Emily stood in the doorway, tears welling. Emily said, "You are tearing yourself apart for shadows." Jonathan muttered, "Shadows only prove that light exists." Her voice broke, whispering, "And light burns those who stare too long." Jonathan turned sharply, eyes blazing, "Then let it burn me." The storm roared louder outside, candlelight flickering violently. Emily whispered, "You are no longer the man I knew." Jonathan froze for a moment, her words cutting deeper than he expected. Yet his hand returned to the pinned notes, muttering, "Truth demands everything." Silence pressed heavy, broken only by the storm's relentless rage. Jonathan stormed into the hidden archive, fury burning in his eyes. Marcus stood by the shelves, expression calm but too carefully composed. Jonathan said, "You've been feeding me lies." Marcus smirked faintly, "Lies and truths wear the same mask." Jonathan slammed his notebook on the table, muttering, "Masks crack under weight." Marcus's tone sharpened, "Then let's see whose mask breaks first." The torches flickered violently as silence grew tense. Jonathan's voice dropped, "You were never with me. You were against me." Marcus replied coldly, "I was always with truth, and truth cannot belong to you alone." Jonathan's hands shook with both rage and betrayal, every memory of trust now poisoned. Emily's warning echoed in his mind, reminding him of deception's reach. Jonathan whispered, "Your betrayal ends here." Marcus only smiled, shadows curling around him like armor. Jonathan returned to his study shaken, betrayal echoing in every thought. Emily entered quietly, her eyes filled with worry. Emily said, "You've been lied to from the start." Jonathan whispered, "Every lie carries a seed of truth." She reached for his shoulder, her voice trembling. "I'll stand with you now, no matter the cost." Jonathan looked at her, stunned by her resolve. He muttered, "You warned me against this path." Emily replied, "I warned because I feared, not because I doubted you." Her words softened the storm within him, if only briefly. Jonathan whispered, "Then we face the abyss together." Emily nodded, tears glimmering but her face steady. The storm outside howled, rain striking the glass like fists. Their silence turned into fragile unity, the first moment Jonathan did not feel entirely alone in his pursuit. The next day, Jonathan and Emily pored over the tragic figure's journals in the library. Emily whispered, "These entries, they describe tests with time distortions." Jonathan's eyes widened, muttering, "Proof carved into ink." Emily said, "But they all ended in failure and loss." Jonathan whispered, "Every failure leaves a map for success." His hand traced diagrams of spirals, equations that shimmered with meaning. Emily frowned, "You see possibilities where others saw graves." Jonathan replied, "Because I am willing to walk where they turned back." A silence fell heavy as Emily looked at him, torn between awe and dread. Thunder rumbled faintly in the distance, though the skies were clear, as if nature itself recoiled from the knowledge they uncovered. Jonathan's voice broke the silence, whispering, "Time is not myth. It is wound in scar, waiting to be reopened." Jonathan uncovered a hidden vault, deep beneath the chapel ruins, the air thick with damp decay. Emily followed, lantern trembling in her hands. Jonathan whispered, "This is where they hid it." Emily said, "Some doors should remain closed." Jonathan pressed his hand against the stone, muttering, "Every door leads forward." The wall shifted with a groan, revealing stairs descending into darkness. Emily shivered, her voice breaking, "I don't want to follow you here." Jonathan glanced back, whispering, "Then let me go alone." Emily's jaw tightened, her fear battling her resolve. She whispered, "If you fall, I fall with you." Together, they descended into shadows, each step carrying the weight of centuries of secrecy. The vault's silence pressed heavy on their chests, as though even the air warned them of what waited below. At the vault's end, Jonathan and Emily faced Professor Alden waiting calmly, his presence cold and commanding. Alden said, "You should not have come here." Jonathan stepped forward, voice sharp. "You've buried truth long enough." Alden's eyes gleamed, his tone cutting. "Truth is burden, not gift." Emily whispered, "Why hide it if it is harmless?" Alden's lips curved faintly, "Because knowledge shifts power, and power destroys balance." Jonathan's voice thundered, "Then let balance break." Alden's gaze hardened, the silence between them heavier than stone. Jonathan muttered, "I will tear your walls down." Alden said, "And you will be crushed beneath them." The lantern flickered, shadows swallowing the chamber. Emily's breath trembled, caught between the two forces, obsession and control, both unyielding. Jonathan's fists clenched, resolve burning brighter than the flickering flame that lit the chamber of secrets. The vault trembled with silence, as Jonathan found a sealed coffin beneath layers of stone. Dust fell as he pried it open, revealing fragile journals and photographs of the victim, an erased witness to forbidden experiments. Jonathan whispered, "You were the proof they buried." Emily's breath shook, her eyes filling with sorrow. Emily said, "This person's suffering was their silence." Jonathan traced the cracked photograph with shaking fingers, muttering, "Their silence screams louder than any lie." The pages revealed tests gone wrong, lives twisted, fates erased. Jonathan's jaw clenched. "This is the revelation." Emily whispered, "This is tragedy, not triumph." Jonathan's voice burned. "Tragedy is the only path to truth." The chamber grew heavier, air dense with the weight of the victim's pain. Jonathan closed the coffin slowly, whispering, "Your voice will not remain hidden." Professor Alden's footsteps echoed into the vault, his figure calm but his eyes burning. Alden said, "You've opened wounds best left closed." Jonathan glared, voice sharp, "You buried lives to bury the truth." Alden's tone stayed cold. "Truth destroys order." Jonathan stepped closer, fists tight. "Order built on lies deserves to fall." Emily whispered, "Stop this before it consumes you both." Alden sneered, "Naive child, do you think history bends to obsession?" Jonathan's jaw set firm, whispering, "History bends to those who refuse silence." Alden's voice thundered, "Then you will inherit their ruin." Lightning cracked above, shaking stone dust loose from the ceiling. Emily clutched Jonathan's arm, eyes wide with fear. The vault seemed alive with tension, every word echoing like the clash of steel. Jonathan whispered, "Ruin is the only soil where truth can grow." From the shadows, the mysterious outsider emerged, his hood low, his voice carrying cryptic weight. Outsider said, "You stand at the fracture of time itself." Jonathan spun toward him, muttering, "You always arrive where answers bleed." The outsider's tones softened. "I offered warnings, not salvation." Jonathan said, "Then why guide me here?" The outsider whispered, "Because lies choke truth, but truth chokes those who grasp it." Emily's voice broke, "Tell us the whole story." The outsider's smirk flickered. "Whole stories do not exist, only fragments." Jonathan stepped forward, eyes blazing. "Then I will stitch the fragments together." The outsider leaned close, voice cold, and bleed with every stitch. Silence swallowed the chamber, broken only by the storm's distant roar. Jonathan's face hardened, whispering, "So be it." Jonathan faced Alden fully, every word a blade. Jonathan said, "You chain the truth in shadows, but I will drag it into light." Alden's eyes narrowed, voice sharp, "Light blinds as easily as it reveals." Emily stepped between them, whispering, "This will destroy you both." Alden sneered, "It already has." Jonathan's heart pounded, the weight of every betrayal pressing on his chest. He muttered, "Then destruction is the final key." Alden's face hardened, his calm breaking into fury. "You will not walk away with this," he said. Jonathan whispered, I already have. The vault walls groaned, dust falling in waves, as though time itself fractured. Emily cried, "Stop before it swallows us." Jonathan's eyes burned brighter, defiance consuming him. He said, "Time will reveal what you tried to erase." Later, Jonathan stood alone at the ruins as dawn broke. The vault behind him lay in silence, its secrets now unburied. Emily had left, unable to watch further. Jonathan whispered, "Truth costs more than I imagined." His eyes lingered on the horizon, where the rising sun cut through the storm's remnants. He muttered, "Time does not forgive, nor does it forget." In his hand, the victim's photograph trembled. Jonathan whispered, "Your silence has ended." Birds rose into the pale sky, their wings catching light. Jonathan's face showed exhaustion, sorrow, and a glimmer of grim triumph. He muttered, "The world will know." The ruins seemed to echo back, indifferent to his vow. As the wind carried the last traces of storm away, Jonathan whispered, "And I will bear its weight until the end."